Follow the bathroom scale. You don't have to be on a weight loss journey to experience a love, hate, frenemy relationship with the scale. I'm Angel, and I'm on a mission to lose 80 pounds. Today, I'll be reading and commenting on Kelsey Miller's article, The Completely Bonkers History of the Bathroom Scale. In the late 19th century, most people had no idea what their weight was. Doctors and hospitals had had scales since the 1870s. They just weren't a part of standardized health evaluations. Certainly, there were sociocultural attitudes and biases about body size and shape, but weight was a subjective concept. I wish Miller had more room to explain subjective concept a little bit better, because people were using body weight in their language in the mid-19th century. I was reading Body Snatching in Ohio, where a young gold digger was introducing himself in a letter to a woman that he was interested in courting, and he described himself and included his weight. That suggests that there was a widespread understanding of body weight and that it already had some cultural value. In the beginning, scales were a novelty. The first penny scale was imported from Germany in 1885. It was a mechanical marvel. Put in a penny, find out your weight. Seeing an opportunity, American manufacturers began producing their own, and by the 1890s, penny scales were popping up in movie theaters, groceries, train stations, drugstores, anywhere you might find vending machines. In essence, that's what they were at this point. Huge and decorative. They came with clanking bells or internal phonographs. They would play a little tune while weighing you. These early scales were less like medical devices and more like fairground amusements. Within a few years, they evolved into slot machines. Drop in a penny, guess your weight, and if you were exactly right, you'd get your money back. Penny scales were enormous money makers for both the growing scale distribution companies and the shopkeepers or operators who maintained them. Those were just the public scales. The first so-called bathroom scale went on sale in 1913, again imported from Germany, and somehow managed to sell despite the fact that the vast majority of Americans didn't even have flush toilets. World War I brought an end to German import, but not to the scale fad. The first American-made bathroom scales came out in 1917, quickly followed by a handful of others as enterprising engineers and investors seized on the ever-rising demand for this product. The Detecto scale company formed in 1921, and by 1925 claimed their scale alone was used by over 1 million people. It wasn't that penny scales were any less popular, but that self-weighing in general was more popular than ever. In 1928, Los Angeles Times article noted the American public spent over $80 million annually to weigh themselves both in private and in public. I used two different inflation calculators, and in today's money, that is over $1 billion. This is super surprising to me because I found an ad for a scale that was $15. That's more than $200 today. An automatic coffee maker in 1924 was roughly $1.50. So this isn't an inexpensive appliance that you're just gonna chuck in the bathroom and close the door. This was an investment piece. Why did people want to do that? A lot was going on all at once. Industrialization, rapid advancements in public health and science, modern media, modern war, just to name a few. Americans had both brand new concepts of health and longevity and very old biases about weight and morality. The scales seemed somehow capable of measuring both of them all at once. White America has always denigrated corpulence as a sign of immorality and sin. Historians have long argued that modern Western dieting and beauty standards are direct descendants of puritanical Protestantism, fasting, self-discipline, and self-denial of earthly pleasures. More recently, sociologist Sabrina Strings delved deeper into this connection, citing the confluence of Protestantism and the transatlantic slave trade. The overtly racist concept of African gluttony, sloth, and ignorance, invented by European colonists and race scientists, met its perfect match in early American Protestantism. Thus, slimness was established as a marker of righteousness and superiority, while fatness symbolized unintelligence, immorality, and blackness. I think we can see these ideas in this scene from Gone with the Wind, a horribly flawed movie. The dialogue is mostly about the white woman not eating.
You can take that all back to the kitchen. I won't need to buy it.
Oh, yes, you is. You's going to eat every mouthful of this.
Oh, I'm not.
Another interesting fact is that documents have survived from as early as 1640, where Quakers were circulating tracts and petitions to try to outlaw slavery in the colonies. Unlike other paradigm shifts in public health, like the campaign against cigarette smoking, the use of seatbelts, this one did not originate with any major scientific research. There was no medical conversation preceding the shift in public perception. People were watching and worrying about weight before their doctors were. In the case of fat, Americans assimilated a new understanding that simply sustained and justified a belief that had already taken root. But why? For starters, health was a whole new thing. Massive medical breakthroughs and societal advancements meant people were living longer and dying from very different illnesses than they used to. Modern sanitation systems, vaccination programs, penicillin, to name a few, resulting in the significant rise in life expectancy, a huge drop in infant mortality, and a great reduction of contagious illnesses. In 1900, infectious diseases, tuberculosis, and pneumonia were the leading causes of death, as had been the case for most of early modern history. Oh yeah, and if you live in even a moderately sized city that's over 100 years old, chances are good you have a quarantine hospital in your city that might even still be there. Hometown field trip! By 1930, degenerative diseases, cancer, cardiovascular disease, had supplanted them. Certainly heart disease had always been around, but drew little attention compared to a horror like TB and diphtheria, which descended and destroyed like an evil spell. No one had worried as much about chronic illnesses previously because up until this point, sickness and longevity seemed completely out of our hands. If you encountered some bad air, you got cholera, and that was that. Now, all of a sudden, health was a thing we had at least some control over. There was a general fixation with the concept of a quantified, perfected human body or human population. Pseudosciences like phrenology generated renewed interest, and states enacted forced sterilization programs. Yeah. In 1927, the United States Supreme Court decided a case. They upheld the state's right to forcibly sterilize a person deemed unsuitable for procreation. Between 1907 and 1963, it's estimated that nearly 70,000 people were forcibly sterilized by government programs. Minorities, poor people, and promiscuous women were often targeted. It's a dark part of our history, too. History is full of lots of darkness. The conflation of physical attributes with health and health with human value had been validated by none less than the United States government. That number could tell them not just what their bodies weighed, but what they themselves were worth. I think we see a lot of that. Public interest in weight and health and control over both only grew larger and more fraught. During World War I, being fat was deemed both unhealthy and unpatriotic. Food will win the war, declared the newly formed U.S. Food Administration, which launched a massive propaganda campaign promoting food conservation. There are probably a good many million people in the United States whose most patriotic act was to get thin and then to stay thin. Oh my goodness. The insurance industry jumped on board because of course they did, launching welfare campaigns about the threat of fat. Many of these health campaigns were directed at women because of course they were, specifically because they were the ones in control of domestic affairs. Women shopped for the household. Meanwhile, insurance table makers began slowly but surely lowering the weight printed on their tables, inching away from average weight and towards those they deemed preferable. The World War I concept of patriotic thinness was soon reaffirmed during World War II, when more and more women were not just in charge of buying the bacon, but bringing it home. More women than ever had joined the workforce, gotten college educations, and suddenly had an unprecedented level of financial independence. It was during this war that the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company did something unprecedented as well. The company made the bold decision to publicly publish one of their weight tables, specifically a table of ideal weights for women. Americans now had something to compare their own weight against. The insurance table made a perfect companion to the bathroom scale, now a fixture in homes throughout the country. MetLife's ideal weight for women was so well received that the company produced their list of ideal weights for men the following year. The weight tables were very problematic but much less harsh than the BMI. The tables did account for things like gender, age, and frame. Still, BMI is a math equation. It does not measure or account for things like muscle mass, insulin sensitivity, genetic history, or other factors contributing to health and size. The BMI was widely adopted in 1985, 100 years after the first penny scale arrived in the United States. And just like the scale itself, the BMI boils us down to a tidy number, giving us a little information, if not much useful knowledge. Yet both the BMI and the bathroom scale remain fixtures in our lives. Despite countless competitors, some of the very first scale companies, including Detecto, are still in business today, and projections estimate the market for bathroom scales will surpass 2.8 billion by next year. There is no current data on just how many Americans have them in their homes today, but it's likely almost everybody. If you like the more heavily researched videos like this one and the one that I did last month on emotional eating, let me know in the comment section below. Maybe I can make one of these once a month. I hope that you are having a great week and that you will have a successful week going forward. I'll see you Wednesday when I'll talk about this week's walking. Bye-bye.